Good evening. Welcome to the October 9th Valley View School Board meeting. As you can see, we've been joined by a group of orange-clad madrigal singers from Bolingbrook High School who are A, going to lead us in the pledge, and then B, they're going to sing a song and talk to us about an event that they are hosting on the 19th. Mr. Fisher will go into the dirty details on that, and it should be a wonderful evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to rise and join us in the pledge, and then I'll have our madrigal singers start the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Fire when ready, gang.
All right, welcome. Thank you for having us with you tonight. We are the Bolingbrook Madrigal Singers, and we are trying to start a new event that hopefully will become an annual thing for us, a food truck festival in Bolingbrook that's going to also feature all of the choirs at Bolingbrook High School and Jazz Band 1. And so between the hours of 5 and 9, there's going to be more than 12 food trucks in the A-Wing parking lot at the high school. We're going to have a stage set up in front of door 1. There's going to be music from 6 to 9, and it's a free admission for everyone between 6 and 9. There is a VIP hour from 5 to 6 if you'd like to avoid some lines, but we hope that you'll all be able to enjoy it with us. The theme of the concert is a decades theme, so every choir is doing songs from a different decade. The Madrigals are doing songs from the 1950s, and so they're going to sing a song called Come Go With Me.
Jim, you should probably know this song. You'll probably know this song since it's from the 50s.
Dum 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 be dooby dum 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 be dooby dum 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 be dooby dum wow dum 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 be dooby dum 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 be dooby dum 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 be dooby dum wow 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 wow. Well, love me darling, come and go with me, please don't send me way beyond the sea. I need you, darling, so come go with me. Come into my heart, tell me, darling, we will never part. I need you, darling, so come go with me. Yes, I need you, yes, I really need you. Please say you'll never leave me. Well, say you'll never, yes, you really never.
You never gave me a chance. Wop, wop.
Come into my heart, tell me, darling, we will never part. I need you, darling, so come go with me. Yes, I need you, yes, I really need you. Please say you'll never leave me. Well, say you'll never, yes, you really never.
You never gave me a chance. Wop, wop.
Come into my heart, tell me, darling, we will never part. I need you, darling, so come go with me. Come and go with me. Come and go with me. Come and go with me. Wow, 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 wow.
Frankie Valley's got nothing on them. Great job. We understand you guys have to leave. I would ask you for an encore, but if you want to do one more, I'm sure nobody here will complain. So that is up to you guys.
Sure, we could do one more. I don't think I said the date. The date is October 19th, so next week, Friday. And we're going to do Shout.
Fire when ready. You guys gonna do it?
Now wait a minute. You know you make me wanna throw my head back and shout, throw my hands up and shout, throw my head back and shout. Come on now, don't forget to see you. Don't forget to see, yeah. Say you will say it right now, baby. Say you will. Come on. Say you will say that you. Say that you love me, say that you want me, say that you need me, you'll never leave me. Shout, come on now, shout, come on now, shout, come on now, shout. I want you to know, I said I want you to know right now. You've been good to me, baby, better than I've been to myself. And if you ever leave me, I don't want nobody else. I said I want you to know. I said I want you to know right now. You know you make me want a little bit softer now, a little bit softer now, a little bit softer now, a little bit louder 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 now. Hey.
Thank y'all. Go to your next stop. Want to see more of that? Come out on the 19th. Plus, they've got 80s, 90s, and 2018. Hits of the classics. I could do Wolf Man Jack if you want. Now back to your regularly scheduled programs. Where are we at? We have the agenda for this evening. Dr. Mitchum, if you would please. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. We have the board affirmation statement. Member Campbell, do you have it up?
Turn this on. Our mission is to empower all learners to be college and career ready and to develop, grow, and achieve as productive citizens.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchum, the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Quigley, I'd like to ask that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Motion?
So move. Second.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Next, Treasurer's Information Report, Treasurer's Report, and Action Report.
Yes, Action Report 5.1 is their monthly treasurer's report. Is prepared by Joanne Borg, our Director of Business Services, includes the usual bevy of reports, including the interim obligation payments for the month of September, totaling $5,027,628.75 for your consideration and action.
Motion to approve?
So move.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? We're spending money. Roll call vote, please.
Member Peril?
Yes.
Member Baduris?
Yes.
Member Campbell? Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes.
Treasurer's Action Report 5.2 is the schedule of bills for the month of October. It represents expenditures from 7 different funds, totaling $3,246,202.12 for your action.
Motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Member Baduris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Peril?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes.
We've got the summary of investments, property taxes received, state funding update, and the school trust account activities for your information or any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Seeing none, hearing none, moving down the agenda. Dr. Mitchum, consent agenda, please.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask that the board approve consent agenda items 6-1 through 6-4, 6-1 board meeting minutes for 9/24/18, 6-2 executive session meeting minutes 9/17/18 and 9/24/18, 6-3 gifts to Romeoville High School and John R. Tibbet Elementary School, and 6-4 student activity contract request approval Jamie McGee Elementary with Scholastic Book Fair.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Peril?
Yes.
Member Campbell? Member Badouris?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Real quickly on that, Doc, do we advertise this book fair at the Jimmy McGee or at any of these schools when they do book fairs? Or is it just done locally within the schools? So the Jamie McGee Book Fair, what is it, November 2nd through the 9th? Is that just internal or is that something that happens? It's, okay, there's not like a period of time? Yeah, parent night. Okay, there we go. You got me where I wanted to go. Thank you. Student and staff recognition. I do not believe we have any this evening, correct? Thank you. Board liaison reports. Any and all from my right? Any and all from my left? It is election season. There are not quite 27 days left in the cycle before the general election on November 6th. So if you're not registered to vote, you still may do that by going down to the registrar's office and get yourself registered, and please vote. There you go. Audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board this evening? Seeing none, moving down the agenda. Action reports. Renewal for snow removal. Contract renewal for snow removal. Gary?
I think we've got a board policy under 11.1.
Did I skip one? Oh, board policy, I'm sorry. 11.1. Ms. Kinder.
Yes, just one board policy tonight with action report 11.1. This is board policy 670, teaching about religions. This is just part of the customary review and update process. There are no significant changes to this policy, and we are just seeking your approval this evening.
Any discussion on that? For clarification purposes, it's very generic. It says that, what is it? Religious issues will be discussed in a historical fashion, not in a religious
Yeah,
fashion.
this is essentially a policy that states that the district in any instruction occurring or any discussions occurring will not give preferential or derogatory treatment to any single religion, religious belief, or to religion in general. The study of religion shall be treated as an academic subject with no emphasis on the advancement or practice of a specific religion.
There you go. Thank you very much for clarification purposes. We have a motion, or can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Member Peril?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Gazafi, contract for snow and salt removal at Bolingbrook High School.
Yes, at this time, we're recommending the renewal with Premier Snow and Ice for the contract of snow removal and salting at Bolingbrook High. Since the school opened back in 2004, we've outsourced that service. It was a year ago that we awarded the one-year contract to Premier, and we are looking to extend that for this year. Rock salt commodity pricing has increased tremendously for 2017 due to a host of reasons that are listed in would cost an estimated contract increase of about 7%. I'm happy to report that this is still below the next competitive bid that had been received last year. And based on historical plowing and salting data for the district, the value of that contract is estimated at $52,486. We've been happy with their responsiveness and their quality of their work, and so at this time we are recommending approval of a one-year contract extension with Premier Snow and Ice to provide snow removal and salting at Bolingbrook High.
So moved. So moved.
Motion seconded. Any discussion? Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Health insurance.
Yeah, section action report is a resolution 1908 approving a health insurance plan exemption. We are recommending approval of this resolution as it will exempt the employee benefit plan from certain provisions of the Public Health Service Act, specifically parity and application of certain limits to mental health and substance abuse disorder benefits. This does not propose, suggest, or enact any changes to our health plan, but it does allow us to exempt the health plan and follow the plan as it has been negotiated. Any changes to those plan benefits would be the result of any approved collective bargaining agreement. And so this is something that we've done annually for as long as I've been here. Again, it's not a change, it's just necessary to keep with the, again, plan design as it's been negotiated.
Need a motion? Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Ms. Nash.
Thank you, President Quigley. Action Report 13.1 is the consolidated action report for this evening. Tonight, we are seeking your approval on 17 items for certified personnel, 18 items for classified personnel, and 4 items for classified administrative personnel.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Next.
Thank you. Action Report 13.2 is the job description for the District English Language Learner Assessment Coordinator. This job description was brought for review as an information report at the September 24th board meeting. We are recommending the board's approval of the proposed job description this evening.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. One more.
Okay, Action Report 13.3 is a resolution number 1905 authorizing the dismissal of an educational support personnel employee for reasons other than reduction in force.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Information reports. New high school language, Chinese 2.
Yes, sir. Information report 14.1 is presenting information prior to seeking approval for the adoption of a new course, Chinese 2. This year is the first year that we offer Chinese 1 at the high school level. That was previously board approved. And so we are intending to expand the opportunities for our students to continue with their language learning. Currently, there are approximately 90 students enrolled across both high schools, and we anticipate that that enrollment will continue to grow as this was just our beginning year. So offering Chinese 2 and then eventually 3 and 4 in subsequent years will ensure that students have a pathway to continue with their language proficiency, as well as the background to take the AP exam, as well as the seal of biliteracy test for the state. So it provides great opportunity for our learners that's in close alignment with our goal to ensure all of our learners are college and career ready. There's a great amount of research that supports language learning and that connection to student achievement and learning in general, and that is linked into the report as well. There are, of course, many benefits for our students in whatever pathway they pursue. It also provides another benefit for us to be able to apply for the Star Talk grant. This is a program that partners we have a partnership with Lewis University currently, but it also would allow us to pursue opportunities for fiscal support to offer immersion-type experiences for our learners through this federal grant to support the development of critical languages, such as Chinese. Inside of the information report, you will find an outline of the goals and the major student outcomes, the course objectives, as well as the course outline. and how that breaks down into the semesters. There's some additional information about the course, and we're happy to answer any questions this evening. Kira Mokan, our administrator for enrichment, is here, and she's able to answer any questions, and we're also able to answer any questions between now and the next board meeting.
So, are there any questions? All right, let's move down the agenda.
Okay. So 14.2 is an information report regarding Every Student Succeeds Act. I'm inviting Tracy Miller to the podium. Tracy is the Assistant Director of Assessment and Continuous Improvement. So she works closely with us, both in the Department of Data and Assessment and supporting continuous improvement in the district as a whole. She's going to provide an overview this evening as it relates to some important information that we need to know as a result of the state's ESSA plan. So I'll turn it over to Tracy, and then we'll both be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening, President Quigley, members of the board, Dr. Mitchum, senior leadership. As Mrs. Kinder said, my name is Tracy Miller, and I'm the Assistant Director of Assessment and Continuous Improvement. I was asked to come tonight to present some information regarding the Every Student Succeeds Act, also called ESSA. The information contained in this presentation was received at a September 7th professional development opportunity. The professional development was hosted by the Illinois Association of School Administrators. Although ESSA was signed into law in 2015, each state has been responsible for determining how the law will be implemented and interpreted. As such, the information presented tonight represents what is currently known, with the knowledge that the Illinois State Board of Education continues to finalize and clarify the plan details. To ensure all stakeholders possess the same foundational knowledge related to Every Student Succeeds Act, I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss a few of the core components of this plan. ESSA is a federal law that was passed in 2015 and replaces the No Child Left Behind Act, as signed by President Bush in 2002. The law covers all students enrolled in kindergarten through 12th grade within the public school system. ESSA provides guidance for states and school districts around annual state testing, expected academic progress, school report cards, teacher qualifications, and funding, while narrowing the federal government's role and allowing more influence from each individual state board of education for how specific expectations are implemented. As just referenced, there are a number of components that are consistent between NCLB and ESSA. Similarities include the identification of content standards that ensure that students are ready for college and/or the workforce. ESSA also continues to include school accountability measures, which include the expectation that states provide resources to schools where students are struggling to meet proficiency expectations. Further, schools and school districts must be able to provide evidence that their efforts are improving student outcomes. With regard to annual state mandated assessments, both NCLB and ESSA require students in grades 3 through 8 and the high school level to complete academic achievement assessments, and students identified in the English language learners at any grade to complete assessments of his or her English proficiency. In addition to students and building outcome measures, both pieces of legislation require that educators are held to specific certification and professional development expectations, and also requires states to post report cards for each school and school district on a publicly accessible website. While there are a number of similarities between NCLB and ESSA, the 2015 law does include some very specific changes. For example, rather than just identifying grade level standards, ESSA requires that any identified standard be both rigorous and tied to post-secondary readiness. With regard to post-secondary readiness, ESSA also provides examples, such as participation in a dual credit course, completion of a program of study, attaining and maintaining employment for 12 months, consecutive summer employment, community service, or participation in 2 or more organized co-curricular activities. ESSA also provides states with flexibility to move towards computer adaptive testing and to track as well as limit how much time students spend completing state-mandated accountability testing each year. When considering all of the ways that the student learning and post-secondary readiness is measured, ESSA also provides each state board of education the autonomy to determine the various weight applied to the measures utilized when comparing schools and districts to each other. Notably, while NCLB required that all students demonstrate grade level appropriateness, ESSA modifies the long-term expectation to 90%. It includes an opportunity to measure proficiency for students with significant cognitive deficits. Ultimately, ESSA requires the categorization of each school so the lowest performing and neediest systems can receive support to improve. we go. As mentioned on the last slide, one of the major differences between NCLB and ESSA includes a shift from 100% proficiency to 90% student proficiency in English language arts and math. In addition to these expectations, ESSA requires that 90% or more of 9th grade students be on track to graduate with their same age peers, and that 90% of students demonstrate readiness for college and career. There is a 15-year time limit for schools to meet these academic expectations, meaning that schools have until 2032 to meet 90% proficiency. Further, ISB is required to check in on school progress every 3 years. Now that we've laid the foundation for the basic components of ESSA, there's one other component to consider. In July of 2015, the Illinois School Code was amended to create the Balanced Accountability Measure Committee within the State Board of Education. The purpose of the committee is to develop recognition standards for student performance and school improvement for all school districts and their individual schools. The standards developed will be an outcome-based balanced accountability measure. The Illinois Balanced Accountability Measure, or IBAM, committee has identified 7 practice standards associated with best practices in school districts. These include continuous improvement, culture and climate, shared leadership, governance, management and operations, educator and employee quality, family and community engagement, and finally, student and learning development. In addition to identifying these standards, IBAM also created a rubric that helps schools gauge their progress as they implement and refine each of their practices. This information is communicated to the State Board of Education, similar to the previously utilized Rising Star. Since ESSA has given the State Board of Education significant control over the ways in which the law will be implemented, the following slides provide a further glimpse into how Illinois will be implementing and monitoring student and school success. This slide represents the various indicators that will be utilized by the Illinois State Board of Education to compare elementary and middle schools within our state for the October 2018 designation. Student growth in both language arts and math represent the greatest measure at 50% of the total score, while ELA and math proficiency represent 10% of the score respectively. Chronic absenteeism represents 20%, while English language proficiency is only 5%. Indicators such as fine arts, pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade, and elementary middle school indicators have not been appropriately defined, so they will not have any designation in the scores released this October.
Tracy, could you tell us the difference between ELA and EL?
Yeah, so ELA is English language arts, so that is the reading and writing and just typical ELA class that students participate in, and English language proficiency, or EL. Those are students who are learning English, and the state is measuring their proficiency towards moving towards mastering English. Does that make sense? Okay. A similar weighting of indicators is also observed at the high school level for October 2018 designations. One major difference from the elementary weighting is that the graduation rate is 50% of a high school score, while the growth was a primary measure identified for students below grade 9. Chronic absenteeism is also a smaller percent, moving from 20% in the elementary example to 7.5% in high school. Again, indicators such as fine arts continue to be further defined by the state board. As such, full credit in these areas will be awarded to schools in the October 2018 designation. Despite the number of categories currently being defined, the Illinois State Board of Education intends for nearly all of the indicators to be appropriately fleshed out and data systems prepared to collect and analyze information in all areas except for fine arts by 2020. With this clarification, the state plans to utilize the weighting system illustrated on this slide to make the 2020 school designations. For further information, please view handout number 1, titled Multiple Indicators of Student Success. It provides a better breakdown, since I know that the numbers were kind of small on this slide. And it's also back to front, so you can see it both in the kind of the pie chart and in a table. Once all the data is calculated and properly weighted, schools in Illinois will be ranked and categorized into 4 designations. The categories are titled exemplary, commendable, underperforming, and lowest performing. The definitions for each designation typically include information regarding 3 components: subgroup performance, graduation rate, and relative comparison to the top 10% of schools across the state. In the top 2 designations, no subgroup of students identified as underperforming, and both have graduation rates above 67%. It is the overall performance falling among the top 10% of Illinois schools that separates exemplary from commendable. If a school has at least one subgroup that is not meeting performance expectations, this school will likely be designated as underperforming. Finally, schools that fall within the lowest performing category have graduation rates below 67% and/or have student performance scores falling in the lowest 5% of Illinois Title I schools. Please see handout number 2 entitled Transparent Designations for a deeper look at the 4 categories. One key quotation that we wanted to emphasize is presented on this slide. Underperforming does not mean the whole school is underperforming, just that one or more subgroups' performance is on par with students who attended the lowest 5% of schools. This is notable because the designation of underperforming could be misleading, as it may appear that schools in this category are not appropriately supporting any student, while the criteria for this category simply indicates that one group of students needs some additional support.
Tracy, can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
I'd just like you to flesh out underperforming schools using a particular percentage so that the board and the public can understand at times the difficulty in attaining that goal. So let's just use, for example, if you can go back to the slide, let's just use, for example, that the all-student category is performing at 60%. And then you have a special education category that's which would mean what for a special education category or an EL category in order for the school to not be underperforming?
Sure, and I'm actually going to draw the board's attention to the transparent designations, the additional handout that was provided in your board packet. It actually goes through and talks about, especially in that underperforming category, the number of different groups that each school is judged against. So we have student groups that include economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, students who formerly had a disability and have been exited from special education services but are still being tracked, English language learners, and then also students who formerly fell in the English language learner category and have been exited as well and are receiving general education supports. There are also racial and ethnic groups such as Hispanic and Latino, American Indian, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian, 2 or more races, and you can see them all listed there. Essentially what is happening is that for each of those individual groups, when a school district or a school has 20 students in each of those categories, those students are compared to other students, the all-student group, which is all students regardless of whether or not they have any of those disabilities or fall within those subgroups. So if underperforming just indicates that you just have one of those subgroups that is being compared to everybody else and is not able to demonstrate the same level of growth.
So for the example that I gave, let's just say a school, for example, has 60% of all the students meeting or exceeding the standard, which would mean that every one of those subgroups would have to be at least 55%.
Correct, yeah.
So hence, I'm just trying to bring attention to the difficulty in attaining that goal for many schools. I just attended the Illinois Association of School Administrators Conference as well as the Large Unit District Association Conference, and that was a significant topic of discussion with all of the superintendents because clearly there are going to be many high-performing schools that will be identified as underperforming because they may have one subgroup of students who can't meet the threshold for the school not underperforming because they may have a very high percentage of students, their aggregate students performing at a particular, a high percentage of students meeting or exceeding the standard, and then one of those many subgroups could not be within 5 percentage points of that aggregate score, thus the school is being identified as underperforming. And so that's it's a very difficult threshold to meet, but I just wanted to make sure we brought attention to that to the board so that you had a clear understanding.
Thank you. Are you done?
I have, I believe, just a couple more slides, and then
Okay.
Mr. Grisofi, I know, has a few more as well. All right, so exit criteria. So there is a process in place for determining how schools can move out of the designation, and that would be that they have not met they are no longer meeting the support criteria. They have established a positive growth trajectory for students and identified supports for continuing to support student growth. So once they are no longer meeting the criteria essentially and are helping students learn and grow, they no longer fall in that designation. As I mentioned just briefly, at this point I'd like to invite Mr. Grisofi to share some information regarding the financial impact of ESSA.
Just a couple quick slides as it relates to district finances under ESSA, or how will we tell our story via site-based expenditure reporting. ESSA will require that schools throughout the state, based on personnel as well as non-personnel expenditures by both federal, state, and local funds, report each school's expenditures for the preceding fiscal year, and that year begins now in 2018-2019. It's relatively simple per pupil expenditure report. We'll use site-level expenditures as well as the site's share of district centralized expenditures, those that are not directly attributable to the school, such as maybe the superintendent's salary, and divide that by the number of students in that school site. And so again, that will give us some insight that we've not had before in terms of are we spending dollars equitably throughout all of the schools within the district. And so that's something that no doubt you'll hear more about as we proceed with the fiscal year that has already begun.
All right, two more quick ones. So one thing I do want to draw our attention to is how we in Valley View are helping to support the work of ESSA. Within Valley View, much of the work on which we have been focused aligns well with ESSA and the state board's interpretation of the law. Our strategic plan, for instance, perfectly aligns with the IBAM quality framework. Within the 5 goals and 11 strategies of our strategic plan, we address all 7 indicators included within IBAM. Our strategic plan is the core of all of our work, and it's the driving force behind our programming and all of our effort. In addition, we're working to further define our current and future systems for collecting and analyzing post-secondary readiness information. With ESSA's emphasis on college and career readiness, we're working to research and implement the best practices to gauge and support our students in meeting this expectation. And finally, we commit to continuing to stay informed in the state board as they clarify and publicize information related to ESSA. As I mentioned at the very beginning, it's kind of evolving. If you have any questions or want to do a little bit more research, here are a number of resources that are available online. Are there any other questions I can try to answer?
Can we go back to Mr. Grestafi's slide?
Sure. Which one?
That one.
Okay.
Correct. So, Gary, this means that the site-level expenditures, if you add that with the site share and then you divide it by the number of school site students? Is that what it's saying? Okay.
Any other questions? Can I make a comment? Sure.
Yes, and so just one point of note, all of our school sites, some of our school sites offer different programming, for example. So you will undoubtedly see some differences for a building that offers like a self-contained program or a program that has a high amount of resources, because that ratio, that proportion amount per student is going to be different, understandably so, because we offer a specialized level of programming, for example. But it will call to light some of the differences in the school sites, but there are unique factors below the surface.
Is that done district-wide or by school? By school.
Site-based reporting is looked at district-wide, and it'll also be looked at by school site.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions? Tracy, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
I assume you're up there to do the next.
I am ready to go whenever you are.
Fire when ready.
Okay, so
Academic
we're just...
update.
Yeah, we're going to switch over the presentation, and I'm going to invite our executive directors of educational services for pre-K-5, Jill Chikalis, and for 612, Adam Herder, up to support me in this presentation. We also have some of our content curriculum directors in the audience, so they can answer any technical or specific questions that require some detail. So tonight we're going to share with you an academic update with Information Report 14.3, and this is specific to PARC results for 2018. PARC, which stands for the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, has been the state tool that's used to measure accountability for all students enrolled in public education in grades 3 through 8. This has been in place since 2015. You may have heard in the previous ESSA presentation that there's probably going to be some changes, or you may have heard in the news that Illinois had made the decision to move away from PARC. We don't have a lot of information yet, but what we do know is that PARC will remain in place for this year. It will just be delivered on a new platform. And then what we anticipate to happen is that there will be some slow changes to the assessment itself to align with the information that Tracy just shared. So we know that for at least one more year, we'll have comparison data. And then we're told that going forward, we will be able to still compare one year to another, but we will see how that bears out with the state's plan. So PARC is divided into two portions of ELA and math, and like I said, it's for students in grades 3 through 8. In Goal 1 of our strategic plan, our goal is to ensure that all learners are college and career ready. PARC is one of the many measures that we use to help us gauge the growth and achievement of our learners. PARC is also the measure that is most publicly shared on our school report card, which is set to be released up at the end of this month. In the previous presentation on the ESSA information, you'll see that many other indicators are going to be added to the state report card and are being used to determine how well we are serving students in terms of their growth and achievement. And for the pie chart that represented the students in grades 3 through 8, 50% is still representative by this measure, whatever the state assessment is. It's actually changing the name to Illinois Assessment of Readiness. And 50% of that is based on ELA and math as measured by the state assessment. So it is an important measure. And it's one that we look to internally to connect with our local measures and determine how well our students are growing and achieving. Tonight, we're going to look at two perspectives on student performance, achievement and growth. And both of these are important and perspectives to take a look at because it really tells a balanced narrative and how we are working to not only grow our students, but translate that growth into achievement. And it's important that we understand both. And we're going to look at one perspective where we show our achievement by grade level compared to prior year in Valley View, and then compared to the state as well. That's not an apples-to-apples comparison. That is looking at grade level to grade level. And then we also heavily rely on looking at cohort growth. It tells a really important story on how we're growing groups of students as they progress through our system. So it really details for us how we're progressing, and we look at that compared to the state as well. And that tells an important story for us in Valley View. Tonight, with our brief overview, we're going to share some positive trends as seen in the data, as well as those opportunities for improvement that exist. After looking at both perspectives, we'll share some insight about the key efforts that we're using and engaging in continuous improvement at each level, and also comment on the successes and those targeted improvement efforts. I do want to note, though, before I look at the data with you, that this brief overview does not fully tell the story of continuous improvement that's happening at all levels in our district, with leaders and educators using data to help drive improvement at the district level, and as well at the building level, using the data to identify the greatest area of need, set goals, and identify other measures to monitor progress as they work to strategically focus on improving student learning, with a focus on instructional practices, as well as a focus on supporting the learning environment and social emotional needs of our learners. We use this data at deeper levels to identify needs for groups of students and to compare our local assessment performance and monitor our performance at the building, team, and classroom level. The continued depth of this work that has evolved tremendously in the past several years demonstrates the commitment of our educators and our leaders to be committed to students and their learning, and be committed to that we are having a strong impact on our students. Some of the positive trends that easily emerge from the data is that we are achieving higher in math. Comparing Valley View in 2017 and comparing to the state in 2018, both showcase higher achievement in math for Valley View students in nearly all grades. So that's just one positive trend to highlight. And again, this speaks to the significant efforts that we've made with our programming in mathematics, both from a programming level at the district to an implementation level at the building, and the shifts that our educators are making in their practices. We've been at the math shift for quite some time now, and it is truly showing in the results of our students. So that is a huge kudos to all of our leaders and all of our educators who are engaged in this hard work. Our middle schools continue to excel. For the fourth straight year, Valley View students in grades 7 and 8 are achieving substantially higher than students across the state in both ELA and math. So that's just kind of a big picture synopsis of some of the positive trends that we see in the data. The first perspective that we're looking at is a grade level comparison from 2017 to 2018. This shows mixed results, as you can see from the color coding in ELA, and generally positive growth in math when we compare each grade level from 2017 to 2018. So keep in mind that this is comparing different groups of students, but it's important because it's one perspective that the state does showcase when they see how well, third grade to third grade is doing over the year trends that exist. And so you can see some of the highlight there is a change from year to year. The math, for example, with a change of 10 points. And then some of the reds in the area of ELA we're going to address in the upcoming slides. This is a grade level comparison, 2018, comparing Valley View to the state. And what you can see, and the math is on the right and ELA is on the left, and you can see the comparison of ELA with the beige or reddish shading for the grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, which we're going to speak to specifically and taking a deeper look at some data that's below the surface here. You can see by 7th and 8th grade, we have some significant gains compared to the state of 10 points at 7th and at 8th. In math, we generally see positive comparison with 2 on par, and then at 7th and 8th again, really taking hold and having that positive gain over what we see presented in the state comparison. When you look back, and I mentioned the ELA, and I'm not glossing over this because what I want you to know is we dig much more deeply below the surface, and so that's what I want to give you a glimpse of now, is because while the achievement isn't demonstrated in the ELA for our lower grades, we do have strong indications that the growth is occurring and that growth will be translating to achievement. I'm going to invite Amy Paris to make a few comments about the data here, and we're going to look at a few measures, 3 to be specific, with our local assessments, Park Scale Score, and then also Lexile, which are all important measures that we use to monitor student growth.
So as we saw, elementary reading has been growing, but not enough in comparison to the state or other Valley View areas. So we've made some major shifts beginning last year, really hoping to ignite some change. And these included the addition of Achieve 3000 at our 4th and 5th grade level, and also the restructuring of our reading support personnel and systems. So we have some preliminary data here that leads us to believe that we are moving in the right direction. A noticeable change can be seen in the district common assessment scores. So we have a shift this year in the 5th graders moving to 6th graders. So here we're talking about 6th grade readiness. And on that first top graph, the top line shows last year's start of the year pre-test, and the second line shows this year's. And so this year we have 15.3% more students meeting or exceeding than the prior year as we start as 6th graders. In the graph below, we're looking at the change in Park scaled scores. So students have not yet made enough growth in achievement to see those big gains between whether they get a 3 or a 4 on Park, but we do see that needle starting to move in terms of their scaled score. And each of those levels between 3rd and 4th, 4th and 5th, and 5th and 6th, we are increasing from the year prior. And then, how do I go to the next slide? Okay, and then this is our fall data for Achieve 3000. This year, we are looking at the pre-test scores. So where it says 6th graders, those would be the beginning of the year 6th grade, 5th grade, beginning of the year 5th grade, so forth. And you can see that our 5th graders moving to 6th grade were coming in 9% higher in terms of college and career readiness this year, which equates to an average of 83 Lexile points higher. Expected growth in a year is 100 Lexile points, so this cohort of kids is already coming in 83 points higher than the previous year's students. And you could see that that increase follows all the way down. So this also gives us some validation of why we've decided to include 3rd grade this year in our Achieve 3000.
Okay, perspective 2 is looking at student cohort growth. And most cohorts of students in Valley View saw gains over the prior year, with large gains seen from 6th to 7th in both subjects. So I can't emphasize enough that this is truly evidence of the impact that the shifts that our educators and our leaders are making is truly translating to higher performance levels for all of for our learners and for tremendous growth. That is definitely significant, and that demonstrates that we are doing a lot of good things, and that is making a positive impact for our kids. So we're very, very proud of the hard work that's really starting to push the needle in terms of achievement for our learners in Valley View. The one data point that sticks out on that slide as an outlier that is not green and is significantly lower is 3rd to 4th grade in math. And this is another example that when you look below the aggregate data, it's becoming more clear to us to pinpoint what's working well and what's not working well. That average is really indicative of all of 12 of our elementary buildings. And when we look at the performance of each individual elementary building, we're able to see some significant differences. And so we are able to connect that with specific things that are happening in terms of educator learning and then student learning in those classrooms. And we're able to really target what's happening and making a positive impact, and then where we need to support to get all of the buildings on the same page. So those buildings that had identified math as their greatest area of need and had really focused their efforts in there had made significant growth, and it's not represented in this number. So that's a positive story for us, and Jill Choukalis is going to elaborate on that specifically, what we're doing to engage in those shifts with teaching and learning in our buildings that we will now translate and move out and spread across all of our buildings. And this is kind of the bottom line here. Student growth in Valley View exceeds that at a 7 out of 10 cohorts when we are comparing ourselves to the state. So that is a really positive story. We are well aware of areas that we need to continue to work on. But the really encouraging thing is that we know what it is, and we know that we're doing the right things to address those areas. And as you can see by the green blocks that are emerging on that chart, with better results in 7 out of the 10 cohorts, it's telling us that the shifts that we are making, the hard work that everyone is putting in to make this happen for our kids is really starting to take hold, and that we will continue to focus in. And that's one thing that I am extremely proud of, is that mindset and shift that we've made with the idea of continuous improvement, because our educators, our leaders, our leadership teams at the buildings are hungry to know why and how to improve. We just don't accept that, okay, we have a positive result. They are really digging in and saying, okay, how can we even get better? We're going to celebrate, and there's a ton to celebrate, but we know we can do even more. And they're being very targeted and intentional and specific about it. And that is a significant shift from where we were in previous years. So I can say that I'm extremely proud of this growth and the hard work that all of our leaders and educators are making. And we were, there was some doubt initially if we raised expectations for our students, could they meet them? Well, they are, and our educators are as well. And I think this chart certainly speaks to that. In terms of elementary, I'm going to ask Jill to make a few comments on some successes and some target improvement efforts, and then Adam to follow.
Okay, so moving forward, looking at elementary math, we have a few successes that we'd like to share, one of them being foundational numeracy. We have students that are experiencing success with being able to show their understanding of new skills and concepts being taught through concrete and pictorial representations of numbers. They're also able to show and explain what they know using different materials, manipulatives, resources, and strategies in the classroom. Another success is that we now have a universal implementation of Eureka Math K through 5, which is really important for building consistent language and vocabulary through our elementary system, and also being able to implement a consistent instructional delivery, so the students will know exactly what to expect moving from year to year. Looking at our targeted improvement efforts, last year we implemented progress monitoring, professional development cycles by the curriculum department, and coaching cycles by our teaching and learning coaches. And we want to continue to replicate those practices. Like Ms. Kinder said, we have identified what works for us, and we want to make sure that we can spread that to all 12 buildings. So of the 6 buildings, that focused on math as their greatest area of need. 5 of those buildings were able to close that gap between 3rd and 4th grade on their PARC results. So the first one being progress monitoring. Our students are able to monitor the progress of their students and plan targeted interventions throughout each unit. So we're not waiting until a mid-unit or even end of unit. We can follow by topic which students need which interventions so that we can kind of address some of the foundational misunderstandings that they might be experiencing. We have professional development cycles where the curriculum team analyzes a lot of the module assessment data from last year and this year, as well as our diagnostic kindergarten through 2nd grade screener data. And we're able to target specific grade levels at our 6 math-focused schools, where the curriculum department goes in and they give feedback on the instructional practices that are being used in the classroom. And the teachers implement that feedback, and so the curriculum department members continue to go in and give this feedback and keep seeing changes in instructional practices. And we saw success with that last year with our student outcomes. And then we have our coaching cycles, which have previously been with individual teachers and are now being moved into also working with teams. So our teaching and learning coaches are working with individuals as well as teams. And we have data that shows last year that when the teaching and learning coaches were working with teachers over an entire module or an entire unit, that we saw an increase in their student outcomes compared to peers that didn't work with a teaching and learning coach. So we want to make sure that we can replicate those practices. Looking at elementary ELA, like Dr. Amy Paris explained earlier, a success for elementary ELA is that we are noticing an increase in 6th grade readiness. And after reviewing and analyzing some student outcome data, as well as collecting some teacher feedback, we have now committed to implementing a more prescriptive reading and writing curriculum with a tightened scope and sequence, because that's what the educators are saying would help them to be more successful in ELA. We're also clearly defining which curricular resources will be used and when to help build that universal vocabulary similar to what we're doing in math. We're also going to be implementing professional development cycles and coaching cycles. Those existed last year, but we're going to be offering more of those in ELA as well. And then building on the success that we experienced last year with 4th and 5th grade using Achieve 3000, that resource has now been rolled out as a universal resource for 3rd grade.
Good evening. Just to recap some of our success and next steps in our middle school classrooms. We have instructional specialists working with middle school teachers, and we noticed that directly a lot of the celebrations we've seen in that middle school data in both literacy and in math came in classrooms who had worked with those instructional specialists, and so that's a practice we intend to fortify and continue. Achieve 3000 reading has brought similar success at the middle school level. Both last year and this year, we had dramatic increases at the middle school level in terms of our literacy scores, especially compared to the state averages. We maintain the resources known as the Lucy Calkins program for reading and for writing, as well as the Great Books program, which are core curriculum resources that middle school ELA teachers utilize. For math, Christy Vey, our Director of Math and Science, is here if you have further specific questions. We have adopted the Illustrative Mathematics curriculum program in the middle school. This is a program that was written by one of the authors of the Math Common Core. It's extremely rigorous. It has our students talking about their learning directly with peers, and it has our students talking about math in a way that is much more conceptual than just memorizing math facts and things like that. So it's something that we saw dramatic success when it was piloted during last school year. And in fact, some of the math classes with the most significant increases on PARC were pilot classrooms of the illustrative math program. And so now that is universally rolled out throughout all the middle school math programs. As well, Christy led the teachers through a book study, Becoming the Math Teacher You Wish You'd Had, which was a way to prepare our teachers to really be able to focus on the rigorous content that the illustrative mathematics program requires them to teach students. So again, we had significant gains, and so appreciation to obviously our leaders of the middle school curriculum, as well as all of our teachers and students at the middle school level.
Okay, so as you can tell, as Tracy mentioned in the ESSA presentation, our strategic plan strategies, our goals, and our strategic plan continue to drive our work. We are focusing on developing our students in the domains of not just being academically ready, but social emotionally ready, and then also having the readiness in the college and career sense as well. We are deeply implementing the Smart School continuous improvement process, which I've alluded to several times, which is truly helping our buildings to focus in their efforts so that we can focus in and do something well and then have that success spread into other areas. And that's really allowed us to be more targeted instead of trying to do everything well and feeling overwhelmed. And we are targeting and focusing our professional learning opportunities to support educators and continually refining their practice and having that same mindset that even if we're good and even if we're doing awesome things, that we can continually improve. And that is represented day in and day out in our classrooms and in our buildings, that mindset is there in terms of how can we do better? How can we celebrate and continue to refine? So this was just a snapshot of park data for 3-8, and it was a very brief overview, general. It did not dive into specific subgroups or grade levels or buildings because we'd be here for days, but I do want to assure you that we do that deep level analysis, and we also are looking at the other measures that we've outlined as those critical indicators that are allowing us to monitor the progress of our goals. And one of those that was not representative of the data was what is occurring at our primary levels and what's occurring at early childhood, and how our students are coming to us in terms of their levels of readiness, be it social, emotional, language and literacy, or cognitive math. And although we have seen some declines in the readiness of our kindergartners that are coming to us, our primary level educators are compensating for those needs that our learners have to ensure that they are social emotionally ready and that they are on the path for that academic readiness too. And I think play-based learning in kindergarten and that shift that we're beginning to make to truly support is a key shift for us, and as well as the early childhood, where those things are strongly in place, and we've had the expansion in our early childhood, is going to help our learners come to us even more and more prepared. And on the note of play-based learning, we had the opportunity today to showcase some of the great things that are going on in our classrooms. And so at Scoff Elementary today, PBS, WTTW11 Chicago visited Scoff and specifically visited one of our bilingual kindergarten classrooms, the classroom of Mrs. Teresa Therese. And they interviewed her about the shifts that she was making in her classroom and the positive things it was doing for our littlest learners. And they interviewed Dr. Chikalis as well. And they also interviewed parents and their perceptions of what these shifts in kindergarten look like. And they even interviewed some of our littlest friends. So it's a very positive thing, and I'm really excited to see the documentary when it comes out. But it's just another example that in all of our buildings, every single day, there is tremendous work occurring, and it is making a positive impact for our kiddos from all the way from our early childhood center all the way up to when they're graduating. And so we're very proud of that. And again, this little snapshot just shows you just one piece of the story that we're happy to tell. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I think we have some of the best teachers around.
We absolutely do.
We have teachers that work hard, the hardest
Absolutely.
working teachers I've ever seen. And I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
Are the teachers given a choice as to whether to work with that learning coach, both elementary and junior high? They are given it. So I'm asking, like, if a teacher shows on test results that they might not be doing as well as others, do we make them?
So initially, coaching is initially started out as something, especially at the middle school level, that teachers sought out if they were interested. As we're becoming more and more targeted and each building's culture has shifted, it's really started to be more intentional. So, for example, at an elementary school I was visiting, the culture has really shifted to not opt-in, but all-in. Like, we're all in this, so it's like not even an option, and it's very commonly accepted. Some other buildings have taken a little bit a little bit more time to come along to that mindset, and but they're opening their doors. And our teaching and learning coaches at elementary are in the classrooms a great deal, and so are the instructional specialists at middle school. With the school improvement efforts that we're making with Smart School, we're getting very focused. So if we notice a certain grade level or specific classroom, we will pair up those supports, and it's becoming more a part of the culture of how we just continue to improve, as well as it's not seen as like a punitive thing, like, oh, now I have to do this extra work. And so it has taken that time to make that adjustment, but we are being very specific, especially when we have evidence and data that shows, and our teachers are really the best testimony of that. In buildings where coaching took hold most quickly, it was by teachers' word of mouth. Like, wow, I worked with the teaching and learning coach, and this was the result that I saw. And then in a specific example, we'd have an educator outperforming her peers in all of the district and the entire grade level across the district. Well, that gets people wondering, what could the impact be if I engaged in that type of reflection and trying to shift my practices and continue to improve? So long answer to a short question, but it is shifting, and we are being more intentional and connecting teachers with the supports.
My second question, this is something that we talked about 2 years ago as a grassroots effort at 4th and 5th grade to possibly have some of our teachers be more specialized in math and more specialized in language arts to possibly do that teaching. I know that we have to have the 5th grade at least has to fall under the same category as junior high, where they have to have.
Right, 5th grade would require to be certified, to have that certification to teach mathematics in particular, as opposed to a generalist elementary certificate, so that would not be possible at 5th grade. We do have flexible grouping occurring in some of our buildings in the upper grade levels and at the elementary. But we've also considered other needs of our learners. For example, the need to create a school community is very important for our learners, and if we're making those connections and building relationships, which we know benefits our learners socially, emotionally, but also academically, that they need that connection. And so in some particular instances, it has not been the best case scenario to have students switching teachers when they've really formed a classroom community or strong relationships. And then in other instances, teams are finding that flexible grouping is working well to really target needs. So it's something that we're still aware of and that we still have a level of implementation of, but it's not a widespread movement to make that shift at 4th grade. And at 5th grade, it obviously isn't a possibility.
Anybody else? So just at the beginning, when you look at that one number, the 3rd graders -9 and 7 and 5, and I know you've got data behind the scenes. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
How fast does this number close? I
Well,
mean, if we did this test again in May, or is it a year from now, what does that look like?
So based on this fall data, I know that by the spring, we're going to have even greater growth. And so the movement that we're seeing in our scale scores, basically, there's thresholds of scale scores that constitute where a student is placed in terms of their level, whether they're a 3 or a 4 or a 5. So 4 and a 5 is what classifies meets and exceeding on Park. So when we have students moving in scale score, but not enough to cross that threshold to be a 4 or to cross that threshold to be a 5, what we know is that we have many students knocking on the door of that achievement level. And so based on the early indications that we see with our incoming groups, that we will see that translate, and we will see that comparison improve as early as next spring. Mm-hmm.
And also, President Quigley, just to reiterate, this is not a cohort data.
I understand.
This is achievement data. And so when you see a number, for example, at -7 for 4th grade, that just means that that group of 4th graders may have had a lower aggregate score than the previous group of 4th graders, but that score there could be still considered growth depending on the cohort from 3rd to 4th grade.
Right.
And so those numbers sometimes can be misleading. which is the struggle that districts are having with the school report card being focused on achievement sometimes, which is why we're moving away from that and having a myriad of other factors that we would consider when determining the effectiveness of schools. And then finally, the last thing I'd like to add to the presentation is that many years ago when we started this journey, we identified that we had a fixed mindset in this district, and that we also focused on student action. And by that I mean that when we looked at our data and recognized areas for improvement, we instinctively became defensive, not just Valley View, but this is just a phenomenon across the country, that we look at our kids and determine what can they do differently that will support their growth and achievement. And the thing that I'm most proud of in this district, with not just the leadership team and the building principals, but also the teachers, is that our focus now has become on adult action. And so when we look at our data, we don't look to the kids as to how they can affect the solution, albeit they can. We look at what we can do as an adult, or what we can do as adults to affect positive change in our kids. And that is what has transformed our fixed mindset into a growth mindset, because we no longer use our children as an excuse for why we may not be achieving or growing our kids based on our expectation. We look at what we can do differently, which I think was described by Rachel and the directors and executive directors in this presentation. Everything you heard was based on what we need to do differently, what we as adults need to change, what challenges do we have as an adult. And I think that's the holy grail of being able to move districts, is ensuring that you first of all, you believe in the kids, that they all can meet proficiency requirements, and then when they don't, you look at what actions as adults we can take to ensure that that happens. And I think that this district has passed that threshold. And so I just see, and in an answer to your question, I continue to see that we will continue to make strides and improvements towards both our growth and achievement. And at some point in time, the growth will catch up with the achievement, as where our achievement will then mirror those of the higher performing districts.
Amen.
And that is what I was trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because I know where we've been and where we were. And then to you and your staff, of course, we appreciate the efforts. But Jim sat here years ago, and I think it was when we started your journey. You said, I don't care what a kid knows or doesn't know. We have to figure out a way to get to them. We need to know what they know and don't know, but we still have to figure out a way to get to them. And this is the process by which we're getting there. So thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all. All right. Let's see here. Legal Services Report. I know you all came for this.
I have no report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Association AFT report. Apparently no report. Valley View Council report. Ditto. Valley View Office Council report. And one more time, no report. Old business before the board this evening. Any new business before the board this evening? Any questions from the public on actions we have taken this evening? Hearing none, seeing none. Any announcements by the board? From my left. From my right. I have two. One was already discussed. The food truck on the 19th. I've been asked to MC, so I will be more witty than I normally am. I'll try to be at least. And two, I have offered and am sponsoring, allow me to get to my phone here, the chili cook-off contest, the Knights Cup. It is on the 20th. It is at St. Andrew's Church. And I sponsored a team last year who got, Jim, help me out. Did they win? They got second place from our food services group. And they did a fantastic job. I have put up an additional fee for another group from the district that may want to show off their chili skills. And if you so do, get a hold of me or, I don't know, Jim, you want to be the contact if somebody in the district wants to. So there's one more out there. Otherwise, we have two? So we have two. So we do have two contestants that I'm sponsoring. Otherwise, I would have to make my chili, and then everybody else would just get like third place. So that's how it is. So, so if you are doing nothing, it's $10. It starts at 5:30. You get tickets and typical chili contest, but they actually do. It's one of the better chili contests. They have A, great chili. B, they bring in chefs from around the Chicago area to be the judges, and they have 2 or 3 categories for judging. I think they might have a restaurant type of quality or restaurant type of deal. They have a more public type of deal, and then like institutional type things. So hopefully one of our 2 teams will get, well, hopefully they'll both get first and second or something. And then the money that they win can go back to their individual schools or whatever it is they choose to put that money into. So thank you for whomever is doing that, and really appreciate it. And it's a fun time too. It's just great community stuff. But it is the 20th, and whoops, put my phone back down here. I took a picture. No, it's at St. Andrew's Church. It says, October 20th, 2018, 505 Kingston Drive, which is St. Andrew's Church, at the Bishop Roger Kaffner Council Lodge, which is the gym or whatever you call it at the school there. The Knight's Chili Cup, $10 admission, 5 tickets to vote for the best chili in the area, samples of contenders, chili, so on and so forth, and there's all kinds of other stuff, and they have a cash bar and what have you. So if you're so inclined, stop by and support that endeavor and vote for our school chilies. We do not need to do this? Okay. Any announcements, other announcements by the board? Any announcements by the administration? Any announcements by the public? I'm told that we are going to go into executive session, but we are no longer going to go into executive session. So a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Have a great evening. Have a safe night.